Hey everybody, it's Party Elite, taking a look at what is probably the most awesome Total War trailer to date, the Dark Elf in-engine cinematic trailer, alongside many new wallpapers we now have access to as well. I'm assuming you've already seen it, so let's jump right into the analysis. If you haven't seen it, I've got a link for you in the description below, just make sure you watch it with a change of pants handy. Alright, so here we see as Morathi and Malakith, mother and son, speak and watch their forces march forth. If it looks like there's chemistry between these two, it's because there is. This is our first actual confirmation of Morathi, though I think we all knew she was coming all along. She's known as the Hag Sorceress of Grond, so one would assume her starting position might be Grond, but that's awfully close to Naggarond. Given how far apart Teclis and Tyrion start for the High Elves, I really hope the Dark Elves are given a similar treatment, and she has some in-game reason for starting elsewhere. Or maybe Malakith is starting elsewhere instead, though that would seem a little strange, I think. Now, Morathi is supposed to be among the most beautiful ladies in the setting, and she might have her enchanting beauty implemented as an area of effect hex. It doesn't affect units who pass a leadership test or units that are immune to psychology, but affects friends and foe alike, at least on tabletop. So maybe in-game, we'll see it only affect units below a certain leadership threshold as long as they're not immune to psychology, and it would be tactically interesting if it affects allied forces in the same way as well. Either way, anybody who is affected by the ability is basically checking Morathi out, and as a result of the distraction, suffers a debuff to melee attack and defense, but hey, can you really blame them? She is a very powerful caster, and should have access to the lore of death, shadows, and dark magic. There's probably a quest in obtaining her weapons, Heartrender that we see here, and I imagine we'll see the Dark Sword as well as her Pegasus mount as an option. So here we fly with the Dark Elf Black Dragon to get our first look at the ongoing battle, as these shots of what I think might be Doombolt crash towards the ground as well, unless we're getting some form of siege weapons added to the Dark Elf roster. Black dragons are extremely strong dragons, and though they cannot breathe fire, they breathe noxious fumes, and I imagine we'll still see that as an ability like we saw in the Battle of the Fallen Gates, and it's possible that rather than just physical damage, we'll see some poison damage as well. These guys are terrifying, have scaly skin, and will be absolutely devastating on the battlefield. Moving on, we actually get our first glimpse of the War Hydra in the corner here, beating on some High Elves. I'll get into details about the War Hydra later though, but for now, just putting a thought out there, maybe we'll see weaker Feral Hydra in the game. The Lizardmen got a lot of Feral units, though that makes sense in context of the race, but do you think we're likely to see something similar done for the Hydra and Dark Elves? Now, after that long segment, these poor souls find themselves trapped here. Not sure what spell that is, unless it's an ability that Malakith has that I'm not aware of. Either way, if it finds itself in-game as an AoE spell that blocks paths, it can be very tactically interesting. Maybe it's Black Horror, but I have reason to believe it's not. If it is, though, it's possible these guys are just out of reach of its effects. But now let's watch Malakith be an absolute badass in complete silence before we analyze what we see in this fairly Rogue One-inspired sequence. Alright, now let's talk Malakith, a very capable fighter and a great caster, though he only has access to the lore of dark magic. We're probably going to see a Cold One mount, a Cold One chariot, and most definitely Seraphon, his black dragon. He causes fear and is immune to psychology, though that doesn't stop him from checking his own mother out, evidently. Now, his armor, the Armor of Midnight, is a very powerful piece of equipment, giving him an insanely high physical resistance. The Destroyer, his sword, is pretty potent as well against magic users, forcing them to show their hand on tabletop. We might see this in-game as a simple constant reduction in power reserve or power recharge rate, or it might be a passive ability that increases miscast chance to 100% to ensure that damage is done whenever an enemy spellcaster casts a spell, or it might be an active ability that needs to be triggered when the enemy is casting in order to cancel the cast or deal damage, but that's getting a little more out there. It might also give him a higher chance of stealing magical items on a campaign map. Supreme Spell Shield gives him high magical resistance, while Circlet of Iron will probably give him better recharge rates for his Winds of Magic. Those last two are most definitely quest items, and with all items on hand, he will be very difficult to take down, so I imagine he'll be extremely expensive in multiplayer. And here is our proper look at the War Hydra. Fire-breathing, many-headed, terrifying, and fear-inducing, and I imagine they will be very capable of regenerating hit points, so will need to be taken down very quickly. I really hope we get to see regrowing heads in-game. It'll be absolutely amazing to see that happen on the battlefield. Now, this is going to be a very expensive unit without a doubt, and will cause a lot of trouble on the battlefield. They will also likely have some degree of missile resistance, and I imagine they might have Rage or Rampage as a mechanic, maybe after losing a certain amount of health, or if leadership goes below a certain amount. I only say that because I think the risk-reward balance with something like that is always interesting. Imagine charging in alongside a Hydra only to have it horribly backfire at a crucial moment. Either way, I'm very excited to see these guys on the field, and I really hope their regeneration is higher than anything we've seen on the field before, just because it makes sense and really makes them a difficult unit to deal with. Now here in the background amidst the smoke, I think we see the Witch Elves and a Cainite Assassin. The Assassin will probably be extremely sneaky, potentially can't be spotted until engaged in combat, or maybe it looks like a different character on the field, though more likely it just can't be seen until within a very small radius. Probably a duelist, maybe causing poison damage, but almost definitely with a high melee attack. Witch Elves are probably frenzied, have poisonous attacks, and again, are likely to have a high melee attack with a potentially low melee defense and little to no armor. Maybe they're unbreakable as well to have them stay in combat to the death. It would make sense, I think. A couple of assumptions in there, but worth thinking about. Now, this model here as well looks decidedly different. Might be a hag with access to various items and abilities. More on that later. And here, as we pan away, I just want to mention I don't think this is what siege battles are actually going to look like, unfortunately, though I do hope we get roomier interiors, allowing us to have more tactical play. Moving on, I believe that's a Black Ark in the corner there, probably going to play a major role in the campaign map, almost definitely going to play a major role rather, and I'm hoping it provides some form of buffs to like nearby armies or provinces. Maybe it can be used to recruit higher tier units from in a local recruitment capacity, something like that. Who knows? The developers know, but they haven't told us yet. Now, let's move on to some of the wallpapers we've got access to. This is a great shot of Lizardmen and Dark Elves in battle. We see a Kroxigor in action up front, while the Black Dragon is having a dance-off with a Feral Carnosaur back there. Now, up front we can see the Har Geneth Executioners with their killing blow intact, hopefully, while the Dark Riders are charging in through the gap. Now, these guys will probably be very quick and also have Vanguard deployment to reflect their tabletop rules. We also see a Cold One Chariot in the far back over there. In this shot, we see a Death Hag who probably gives some buffs to nearby Witch Elves and is likely a very capable melee combatant as well. We also have a Dark Elf melee specialist is my guess. I don't recognize it as a specific unit, so correct me if I'm wrong. Now Malakith here is casting the spell Black Horror from the lore of Dark Magic. This looks more like it than the little flame in the trailer that I pointed out, and it might be a stationary vortex, but whether it is or it isn't, I just hope it's a potent vortex spell. Seems to be causing some hurt here at least. And here, we have an excellent look at the Cauldron of Blood on the far left. I believe it's supposed to be immobile, but here it looks like it's rolled right up to the High Elf front line. Apart from great missile resistance, it will also cause terror and will likely be unbreakable. It should give great buffs to nearby units, providing Frenzy and a significant ward save to all Witch Elves nearby, while other Dark Elf units will also likely get a charge bonus or a higher melee attack. This might turn into a map-wide effect, though that might be very powerful, especially considering the persistent frenzy. However, it does create an interesting tactical situation where, as opposed to having to deal with artillery, the other side has to go in and deal with the Cauldron to make sure all those buffs are taken care of. We also get to see the War Hydra here on its hind legs, while Corsairs are leaping into the enemy. And finally, a great shot of a Dreadlord on a Black Dragon, duking it out with a Frostheart Phoenix, while Dragon Princes of Caledor charge foolishly into a line of Dread Spears, showing a little bit of lacking tactical foresight like we've seen the High Elves do in previous trailers, or maybe this is just some of that elven overconfidence. Who knows? And that is that, folks. A great amount of information revealed today and through the whole week, to be perfectly honest. Let me know what you thought of this trailer, and if I missed anything, feel absolutely free to drop it in the comments below. This is probably my favorite trailer out of both games to date, and the music, especially those strings at the end, sent a chill down my spine. I absolutely love it. The voices are excellent as well, I have to say. Now, I can't wait to see the full roster reveal, and Grace has said Friday on Reddit. Literally just that one word. So we don't really know if it's this Friday, next Friday, or a Friday a month from now. And knowing how they are with their marketing, it could just be a clever ruse. Now, apart from that, as much as Creative Assembly wants to deny it, I hope to see some rats very soon. We know they're coming in the game. I just want to see something. But make sure you subscribe to this channel if you'd like to keep up with all the news and goodness we're getting pre-launch. It is really ramping up right now. This hype train has no brakes. Thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you all on the bloody battlefields of Total War Warhammer 2.